Chapter 13. Who Controls Our Thoughts? Anasta was left totally alone. Slowly she set off walking along the wilted grass of the valley where her family line had so very recently lived, in the absolute silence that had fallen. She tried to comprehend how she could control her own thought. If thought was the strongest energy, the little girl reflected, then what could possibly control it, this strongest thing? And if this energy thought exists within me, then what within me could be stronger than it? And why did the most wise elders teach us everything at the gatherings, but say nothing about how you can control your thought? Perhaps they did not know anything about this either? The strongest energy remains uncontrolled. First it heads off in one direction, and then another. Even though it's inside me, all the same, it's also not mine if I don't control it in any way. And maybe someone will manage to lure it over to them and play with it. And since it's inside me, then they're playing some kind of game with me too. But I won't even know about it. All the way up until dusk, Anasta made efforts to reflect on the power of thought. And when she lay down to sleep, she made an intense effort to think about it. When she woke up in the morning, Anasta did not see Don the mammoth next to her little home the way she usually did. He used to always be right there as soon as she woke up, but now he was not there. Don still hadn't shown up by the time Anasta had bathed in the creek either. She began calling him, shouting in the direction of the pasture, "Don! Don!" But just as before, he did not show up. Kitten hadn't been next to her that night either, and he also did not show up in the morning. Anasta realized they had left. A mammoth needs a lot of vegetation to eat, and there was less and less of it all the time. That meant Don had left so that he wouldn't die a senseless death from starvation. And Kitten had gone off with him too. But I won't leave, Anasta thought. Tossing a coverlet, woven from grass bast, around her shoulders, she resolutely set off for the mountain beyond which the glacier was advancing on the world. Wending her way up the path toward the mountaintop, Anasta once again made an intense effort to comprehend how this strongest energy, human thought, worked. What did she need to do in order to stop the glacier? When she had reached the mountaintop, she stood on its peak, wrapping herself in her shawl in the wind. Harsh, bitterly cold air currents tousled her hair, now uncovering the star-shaped birthmark on her forehead, now covering it again. But the little girl did not notice the cold air currents. She was taking in what was going on down below, on the far side of the mountain, whose foothills no longer sported any verdure. From horizon to horizon, as far as the eye could see, there lay ice. Blocks of ice were heading for the mountain. They were huge, and this wasn't even the main glacier, but merely the first ice cakes that the more powerful ones were pushing along. That meant the mountain didn't stand a chance against these giant masses, Anasta was thinking. One side of the mountain had already grown cold, and there was no vegetation on it, and the second one would grow cold as well. As if confirming her words, the sound of cracking ice was heard, and a stream of water mixed with ice chips rushed out from beneath the ice, and the ice blocks traveled along the slush, coming closer and closer to the mountain, plowing up the earth before them and pushing along the felled trees. Anasta directed her gaze to the tallest block of ice and started at what she saw. There stood Don the mammoth, his head pressed against this giant mountain of ice. Alongside the giant mass of ice, he no longer seemed so big. Anasta instantly recalled how attentively Don had listened to her words about the power of thought that is capable of a great deal. She recalled telling him that probably there must be big and powerful thoughts in his big head, and he had understood all of that in his own way. He'd figured that if he were to put his big head with its big thought up against the ice block, then he would be able to stop it from moving. Anasta raced from her spot and ran headlong along the path to the foothill of the mountain to the spot where Don the mammoth was standing. The wind, with its biting snowflakes, tore off the little girl's scarf in a violent gust, but she did not pick it up. She jumped forward onto a rock, stumbled, and rolled down head over heels. Then she got up once more and set off running. When she'd gotten to Don's legs, she saw a small depression had formed in the ice beneath the mammoth's head. The ice there had melted a tiny bit, and water was running down the mammoth's trunk in thin streams. The mammoth was trembling from the cold, and down below at his feet Anasta saw that Kitten was trembling from the cold. His head pressed against the ice like Don, was attempting to hold back the glacier's movement. "Hey!" Anasta shouted. "Hey!" But neither the mammoth nor the cat responded to her shout. The little girl scooped up Kitten, who was trembling from the cold, and, cuddling him, began rubbing his little body. When he'd gotten warmed up a bit, Anasta made him scramble up to the mammoth's back. Kitten tried with all his strength to do it, but he fell. He was only able to make it up on top on his second attempt. Anasta stood up on the rock so that she would be as close as possible to the mammoth's ear, and she whispered to him, "Don, my faithful Don, you are very smart and loyal. You are kind. You know how to think. Maybe not entirely correctly, but we'll fix that. Thought isn't just in the head. It's everywhere. Don, you should go to the other side of the mountain." The mammoth stood there without moving. Only now and then a shudder would run through his body. And Anasta began whispering once more. "I am Anasta. Do you hear me, Don? I am Anasta, and I will not leave here without you. Turn and look at me, Don." Don the mammoth slowly pulled his head back from the block and turned it to the little girl. The thick fur on his forehead was wet, and he had a hard time raising his eyelids and looking at the little girl. Then he made an effort to raise his trunk and touch its tip to Anasta's shoulder. His trunk was totally cold. Anasta took it in her hands and began rubbing it and blowing on it as if by doing so she could warm the mammoth's huge body. And she did actually warm it, not only with the warmth of her breath, but with something warmer and more meaningful as well. The mammoth obeyed and followed Anasta, who led him by his trunk as if she were leading him by the hand. Barely putting one foot in front of the other, Don ascended to the mountaintop. There the exhausted little girl sat down on the trunk of a fallen tree and, pointing to a slope that still remained green, ordered the mammoth to make his way down. "Don, go down there. Go to your pasture. You'll rest up, and you'll get your strength back. You'll find some food for yourself there, too," she added, sternly. "Don, go down there." The mammoth obeyed and began slowly making his way down along the path to the still green valley. When he'd taken 10 or so steps, he turned to Anasta, extended his trunk upward, and trumpeted out a summons, the way he had done when Anasta had run through the valley, asking her motherland to not give in to the glacier, when she had shouted her, "Hey!" and conquered the silence. And just like she had done then, Anasta summoned her strength and shouted out, "Hey!" and waved to Don as a send-off for him on his downhill path. And Don the mammoth made his way slowly down off the mountain, carrying out his mistress's order. But after a brief rest, Anasta stood up atop the rock and once again cast her gaze over the giant ice masses that had filled the space before her as far as the eye could see. And quietly but confidently she uttered the words, "I am a person. My thought is powerful. I am directing my thought against you, Glacier. You must stop and crawl back where you came from. With my thought, I command you to do so." Down below, the sound of a crack was heard once more, and the ice moved a tiny bit closer to the mountain. A gust of cold air hit the little girl in the chest as if trying to knock her off her feet. "Go back, ice. I command you, back." Once again a crack, and once again the glacier advanced toward the little girl. Anasta said nothing for a short time, gazing at the advancing glacier. And suddenly she smiled. "I get it. You are feeding on my thought, Glacier. I get it. But now you will cease to exist." Anasta turned her back on the glacier, sat down on a tree trunk, and began looking at her still green valley. But Anasta did not see flowers and grasses that were withering from the cold. Rather, she was imagining the meadow blooming in a vibrant color, imagining that the snow-white and pink flowers were coming out on the trees, that birds were singing, and grasshoppers were churring in the grass. Imagining great-grandfather Wood returning to the valley, and the entire family line returning along with him. And Anasta was running toward him barefoot through the grass, more and more quickly all the time. Anasta's thought was speeding up more and more. She had enough time. In the space of a moment, she tenderly stroked 1,000,000,000 blades of grass. She was able to imagine each one separately, from its root up to its little stem. She was able to send a little ray of sun to each one, give each one a little drop of rain to drink, and caress it with a breeze. Anasta fell asleep on the rocks near the trunk of a fallen tree. A cold wind blew against her back, but even as the little girl was falling asleep, her thought was at work and speeding up more and more. Hurtling lightning bolts coming from her thought, touched everything in space. Creation awoke, and the new was born in the space, as if Anasta's entire motherland had risen from a deep sleep. The thought kept working even when the little girl Anasta fell into a sleep that would last thousands of years. Her thought, the great human energy, lingered above the valley, caressing the bugs and the blades of grass, Kitten and Don the mammoth. The ice blocks shuddered and cracked, but they could not move forward any farther, not even a millimeter. They were melting. Streams of ice, melted ice, skirted the valley and flowed into rivers and lakes. The glacier was melting, powerless to overcome human thought, the strongest energy in the universe.